I can hear you.
Okay, I can hear you too. Oh, I hear you.
All right. Hi, everybody. Today, I'm really excited to talk with my really dear friend, Elena Son. She and I met in Japan in October of 2018. We were both selected as one of 10 Asian American leaders to participate in the Kakahashi program as guests of the Consul General of Japan and the Japanese government. And I just remember the first time I met Elena, and we just hit it off right away, and she has become my sister, and she's amazing, and I'm so grateful to have you on as my guest today as we talk about international business and mental health. But before we get started, I need people to know who you are because you have this amazing resume. Elena is the executive director of the American-Uzbekistan Chamber of Commerce. She is also on the US-Kyrgyzstan Business Council, the US-Tajikistan Business Council, and US-Afghanistan Business Initiative. That's a lot of syllables for all of the titles that you hold. In addition, you have been very involved in international business and small business, private business sector, I should say, all over the globe, and the work that you do with different ambassadors all over the globe. And one thing that I think is really cool that you do is that you are a rebranding ambassador for the Ronald Reagan Building and International Trade Center in Washington, D.C. You currently live in Washington, D.C.
Yes.
And so that's just a tiny little snippet of your resume, but I would love for you just to share with our audience more of what you do and what you've been doing.
Sure. Well, thank you so much, my sister Priscilla, for the opportunity to host me here on Sunday afternoon. I don't know if it's still morning time in Denver, Colorado. And hello to all your audience, regardless of where you are. Again, thank you so much for the opportunity to have my bio read out loud to a much broader community. Indeed, I'm involved in international business relations, and you pronounced all the countries that we represent actually properly and correctly.
I went very slowly. I went very slowly to make sure I was pronouncing all of the syllables correctly.
Yes, all the syllables, you got them. And I think that's partly also because you're a musician, right? So musicians, my understanding, is much easier for them to pronounce all these complex words. But indeed, we work, so I represent several business groups, and we represent American Fortune 100 and Fortune 500 companies in these markets, in the market of Uzbekistan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, and Afghanistan. And what we do is we work on companies' issues. We want to make sure that whatever we do helps generate more economic gains and more profits for the American public, as well as for people in Uzbekistan and Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, and Afghanistan. And broader, it's called Central Asia. So Central Asia, apart from Afghanistan, 3 countries, Uzbekistan, Kyrgyzstan, and Tajikistan, were part of the former Soviet Union. So with the collapse of the former Soviet Union, they became independent. And one thing that is really remarkable and admirable about the governments and the people of these countries is that they all look up at the US. They look at the US for opportunities to improve the economy, to improve their managerial skills, to improve their technology, to improve their education, to improve their healthcare. And I know that there are some people here in the US, I mean, we're very critical about our society. We're very critical and kind of like very, because we demand a lot from ourselves, right? And so we always try to improve, and we always try to identify areas that we can work and we can improve. But I always say, as someone who grew up outside of the US, I always say the US is the best country in the world, no matter what the challenges are, no matter what the changes are, no matter what their deficiencies are. Is still the best country that provides the best economic opportunities, educational opportunities, and other opportunities for people for people who were either born here or who came here as myself. But again, going back to my professional work, as I said, we work with the private sector, we work with the governments, with the administration here in the US, as well as regional governments, with international financial institutions. So that requires a lot of partnerships, that requires a lot of kind of like discussions and a lot of information as well. I think that in our time and age where we come in is we provide resources to the governments and to the people and to the general public and to those who are involved and responsible about what it is to work with American companies, how American companies work, what kind of expertise, what kind of skills, what kind of benefits they can bring to the new society or to the people, to be either old or young. And I think that what I did notice is that everybody wants to buy American products. Everybody wants iPhones, everybody wants American cars, everybody wants to listen to American music, everybody wants to wear American fashion and American brands, you name it. So I think that we have, as Americans, we have to realize that we have so many people outside of the US who want to embrace, who want to be part of our culture. And that's the most exciting part of working in this business, because people do look up at the US. And my day is never the same. Every day is different. Every day we have different meetings, we have different changes, we have different challenges. But knowing that we work for the benefit and for the best of the American people, as well as peoples in Central Asia, actually makes my life worthwhile, I think.
So you have quite a unique story, and you bring such a unique lens, because even though you are, your heritage is Korean, and that's how we connected as a Korean speakers, your family, you did not grow up in Korea, and you don't really speak Korean, but so share the story of how your family went from Korea to Uzbekistan.
Sure. Yes. So when people see me in the streets, they think that I'm from Asia, and so therefore their immediate kind of like reaction is that I should speak one of those languages. So when I tell them that actually I'm fluent in Russian, they're like, "What? Russian?" So now having the blonde hair, I mean, does help, but still, they do question as to why I do not speak Korean. So in 1937, Stalin, and I'm sure that your audience can relate to that this authoritarian figure. So he moved my grandparents in 1937 from the Far East of Russia to Central Asia to Kazakhstan. So they were given 24 hours. They were put on commercial trains that were basically for cattle breeding, and they were brought in the middle of nowhere with absolutely no money, no belongings, nothing. And thankfully, the peoples of Central Asia were very hospitable, very, very receptive, and very sympathetic of the needs and the challenges that my grandparents have been going through. So they immediately provided them with the housing and with good conditions, so that my parents were born in Central Asia. I was born also in Central Asia. We moved within Central Asia so that we could have a normal life. And I think that's where we talk about the changes and the challenges and the opportunities. I mean, we were put in the middle of nowhere. That's a challenge, right? But I think that we embrace that challenge, and it was also part of the survival instinct. It's kind of like trying to do the best. My grandparents, from my father's side, he did pretty well in the government, so he held high positions. But again, he was able to adapt, and rather than complain and kind of like criticize the change and resist the change, he decided to embrace it so that he can provide much better opportunities for his children and for myself. And so again, back in the days under the Soviet Union rules, my family was not allowed to speak Korean, because it was very isolated, very close environment, and we were forced to forget our cultural heritage. Thankfully, my parents, I mean, when it comes to customs and traditions, we were able to maintain that. But the language as such, I mean, we were sent to Russian-speaking schools so that we could integrate, right, with the rest of society much seamlessly, or with less pain than my grandparents. So which is why I'm sorry, I don't speak Korean, but I do speak Russian.
I know Das Vidanya.
I know. Oh, well, here you go. Here you go.
I know. So share more about your journey into these leadership roles. Like, again, you are traveling back and forth from DC to Uzbekistan all the time, and to other places in the globe, representing both governments, US government and Uzbekistani government. And so how did you get involved in government work like this?
Well, it's a good question. So my journey has been very lengthy. I mean, not only because I'm of a certain age, so I had my years of building where I was able to build my career, but again, networking, connections. That does help. So I worked back in the days, I worked for the British ambassador, Barbara Hay, an amazing woman and someone who I really, she is the one that my idol, in a good sense of it, my mentor, that taught me how to work, how to be dedicated, how to be hardworking, how to be detail oriented. And so later on, when I came to the US, I had another mentor, Philippa Street, who was my first employee here in the US. And then now I have this incredible woman, a powerful woman, extremely smart, Carolyn Lamb, who is a chairperson of my chamber. So what happened back in again, talking about the connection. So I used to work with, used to know former US ambassador to Turkey, Ross Wilson. So he was the one who actually interviewed me for a couple of positions, but then he recommended Carolyn Lamb, my current employer, to actually give me a chance to see if I would be a right fit for the chamber. So that's how it all started. And then I started working for the chamber, and it opened up so many opportunities for me. Again, working for any kind of organization, regardless of where you are, whether you are the managerial, whether you are at the entry level, administrative, or at the executive level. The most incredible thing is that be open, try to learn. And I know that we all have our own convictions, that we have our own principles and whatever, but whatever we do, try always to embrace other people's feedback. What I do see right now is that we have younger generation entering the workforce. And of course, they're very opinionated. I think our cultural heritage, talking about our cultural heritage, Priscilla, correct me if I'm wrong, we kind of like used to respect the elders, right? Respect the authorities. And sometimes I'm taken aback when a younger generation comes in and say like, no, this is not what I'm going to do. My job actually finishes at 5 o'clock. And so I have to go and do my yoga. Back in the days, I mean, if my employer told me to be here at 8 o'clock in the evening, I will be there. And even if I had an important birthday to go to, I would sacrifice that birthday for the work. So I think that partly it trained me how to put my work above myself, which is probably not the best, because given right now that we're talking about mental health and how to be adaptable and how to pay attention to our kind of like inner voice, I think that maybe that was not the right thing to do. But it actually instilled in me this sense of being a good employee, being a responsible employee, and people do notice. Your boss does notice, right? Your manager does notice. Your colleague do notice when you give 100% of yourself to the job, and when you take responsibility, when you take not only this responsibility, when you take the share, and when you take the initiative. I think that's a very important thing. We're not here, and this is what I've learned from my bosses, from all my mentors, is don't try to come and do your job. Show the initiative, do more. Mm-hmm. Come up with more ideas. I mean, be prepared that those ideas will not be welcome, because sometimes managers do not like new ideas, especially from the subordinates. But you do not have to be vocal. I mean, you do not have to be very assertive. You do not have to be aggressive with those ideas. Sometimes these ideas will come in handy. It's just that there is always the right time and the right place. And so where I am right now, I'm very fortunate to have the opportunity to work with great companies, to work with great people, to work with the diversity of people, of different genders, political interests, and geographical background and cultural background. But nevertheless, I think these are all the people who have very high standards. They demand a lot from themselves. They also demand a lot from others. And I think that sets the bar very high. And so the Asian thing is, again, going back to the Asian thing, right, is we're always trying to do our best. But that brings a very important issue to my mind, is that when we're trying to do our best, we're always cognizant of maybe there will be a failure. Maybe there will be a mistake. Don't be afraid of mistakes. Don't be afraid of the failures. That's part of life. And don't be afraid that tomorrow you will be criticized at the meeting. Guess what? Life is so fluid. Today you're criticized. Tomorrow you will be a poster child. Tomorrow you will be an employee of the year. So be prepared. Take it as you go. It's part of life, and that makes our life more interesting and more exciting. I mean, I know it gives us a little bit of anxiety, but nevertheless, that's what makes life what it is.
I think what I hear you saying is that relationship piece is so critical, especially now that we are limited to a computer screen.
Yes.
And building those relationships and taking the time to go into a deep dive with the individuals that we are working closely with. And another thing that I heard you say was to be open to all viewpoints and yes. all thoughts. It is so important for us as global citizens and international citizens to understand that there are many, many ways of thinking. There's more than one way to skin a cat, but the individuals who do step up and elevate their position in their jobs is going to be really crucial because right now many areas of our government are shut down, and when things start to open up again, it's going to be extremely competitive. So how do you rise from the pack as the cream, right? How do you ensure your relevancy in the workforce, especially as a young person who's in college and they are still learning these skills of communication, relationship building, sacrifice. There's always sacrifice if you want to be the best in what you do. I mean, would you agree?
Yes, I mean, there is sacrifice. And some people say like, oh, you can't sacrifice your personal interests, your personal convictions. You don't sacrifice them, but you have to give up in order to get something you have to give something kind of like away, knowing that what you will get in return in 2 or 3 years will be much bigger. So I think that what we are accustomed to is getting immediate results, right? It's being kind of like, oh, I gave this person so much, so I want instantly a feedback, a return.
And that's delayed gratification, right?
Delayed gratification. No, it's not going to happen. Some people will take it years before, and this is what I've seen. I mean, I used to help, and I still try to help within my limits. I mean, within my time limits, let's put it like this. Used to help some people, and I would never hear back from them, and I will be like, but I did help this person. Like, at least, hello, my parents told me to send a thank you card. Never heard back from them. But years later, they did reach out to me and said, like, Elena, what you did to me back then was so significant, because then I was able to go and change my career path and do so much more. So that was a kind of like, and when you get these kind of emails out of nowhere, I think they're more precious and more important. And talking about the relationships, I think that we are human beings, right? We crave for connection. And some of us are saying, like, some of us like to say like, oh, I'm not a kind of like, I'm an introvert. I don't like people. I have my limits. Yes, of course. I mean, we all have our limits. We all want to have our me time. I spend my me time watching a YouTube. Sometimes like the shows or the influencers on Instagram that I like. That's kind of like my mental rest, right? But talking about the relationships, people always think, not always, let me take there. Sometimes people think that they have to master relationships with people outside of their family. Like they have to improve their relations with the employee, I mean, with a boss, with a colleague, or with a partner, or whatever. Improve your relations within your family first. My dad always say, if you want to be a good wife, make sure that you have good relations with your father. Because knowing how to treat your father will help you be a better wife, better mother, better whatever, better girlfriend and whatever. So try to practice, and that's, I mean, it's a bad word, practice, but try to work on your relations with your immediate family members, with your siblings, with your parents, maybe with your grandparents, because there are different dynamics. These are different people of different ages, of different professional backgrounds, different cultural backgrounds. And when you go outside of the world, I mean, when you go outside of your family nuclear, then you can have more confidence and better understanding as to how to deal with people of different generations. And so going back to kind of like to our business relationships, I see it all the time. I mean, my audience is very diverse, very well driven. I mean, highly educated, professional. They have a lot of opinion. They have a lot of experience and knowledge. Being humble when you come in with an open mind, thinking like, okay, these people have much more to offer than I do. Why don't I come to them? Like, yes, of course. I mean, I have my own interests, I have my own views, but sometimes embracing, receiving is very, very helpful. And now with this kind of like with the new challenges that we have, and we talked about this just before we went live. So Priscilla and I were talking like, how am I doing during this time? I actually have to say, honestly, I'm doing much better than I thought. I really enjoy this time of being with my family, of trying to broaden my professional horizons, trying to diversify my work, and trying to do something that I've never done before. So number one, and I'm trying to improve my relations with my parents. I'm trying also to improve my house. I'm trying to improve my culinary skills, but I'm also working more on my business. And maybe we can talk a little bit more about business, Priscilla, if time allows us.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great perspective of really leveraging this time that we have at home to build those relationships. Because I know for high-powered people, busy people, we've had we've had more dinners together in the last, 6 weeks than we have in many years. And so, it's a great reminder to have gratitude and work on these relationships and rebuild them, because before we know it, we're going to be, back to things as normal. But you mentioned something, and I want to turn to the mental health work that you do. So for me, as a K-12 educator, we talk a lot about mental health supports. Right now, it's really challenging because a lot of our children who have been receiving regular supports, that support looks very different. It's been interrupted. Students are not getting the same amount of attention. And parents who are not used to and have not been trained to give specific types of supports at home are getting stressed out. So it's stress upon stress that we're seeing. We have not been talking a lot, but it's getting more prevalent to talk about mental health at the college level. I would love to hear from you your thoughts around mental health in the workplace and business, because a lot of adults are managing their stress and managing the things that they've had to work on in order to be successful in the workplace. Can we just expand on that?
Sure, of course. Well, maybe we can start with something that we kind of like covered before in our previous discussion, which is the importance of education. I mean, I understand how challenging it is to have a full-time job and to keep an eye after your family and children and make sure that they get the education. But I cannot emphasize enough how important education is to building successful career, to becoming a successful professional, and especially when children of a younger age. I mean, when I was in my teens, when I was in my 20s and in the early 30s, I always thought like, oh, education, although I do have a lot of education. So I always thought, well, you need to go to business, you need to make money, and then the rest will come. No, actually, the basic education that you get when you're 7, 8, 9, 10, 13, 14, 15, 16, 18, is extremely important, because these are the fundamentals that are going to be, these are the blocks that you're going to accumulate and build more and much better house on top of these foundations. So a good, strong house cannot be built, a great palace cannot be built on a weak foundation. So parents, I know that this is very challenging, and I do applaud Priscilla, because I know that you're a teacher, so a lot of falls on your shoulders. So the kind of like the environment that we have, the online learning, maybe not the best, but try to teach them maybe not academic knowledge, try to share with them what you know, try to share family history, try to share with them your personal interests, how you moved up the ladder, professional ladder, or what makes your everyday kind of like life more exciting. Share with children, and that will be, I think, more educational, that will be more engaging, that will make the family much closer. And again, building relations is extremely, extremely important. Again, in my business, I mean, you have to build relationships, right? Because relationship is trust. If I trust you, I'll do business with you. If I don't trust you, I will not do business with you. And no matter what you do, I will just turn away and I will go to the next supplier, to the next client, to the next customer. And I think that's where, again, it's practicing those relations. And even though we are online, and I know that there is a lot of anxiety, I mean, I always get, when the whole thing started, I was like, as someone who leads all these business groups, and I mean, we provide service, so I'm a service provider. As a service provider, my first thing was like, am I going to lose my clients? Am I going to lose my companies? Of course, I mean, I have this anxiety thinking, am I going to have a job tomorrow before the end of 2020? Am I going to have enough budget to run my organizations in 2021? So, and rather than kind of like be focused on those issues, what I decided to do is trying to, within my professional kind of like realm, within my professional scope, I decided to diversify. So we cover Uzbekistan, Kyrgyzstan, and Tajikistan, and Afghanistan. These are the 4 countries that we cover. But then I decided, since we have the online capacity, and we have a huge audience, we decided to go outside of our countries and embrace the whole region rather than just individual countries, and provide more service to our customers, provide more information to people. And then as a result, I started getting more inquiries from outside communities saying like, Elena, this was a great seminar. This was a great workshop. You provided so much knowledge on the kind of like on the pandemic. Because one of the things that we have been able to share with through our speakers was that this is not a financial crisis. This is a healthcare related, crisis. This is not where there is no demand or there is no supply. No, there is the demand, there is a supply, but there is a healthcare issue. So number one, understand that the healthcare and the safety of your employees and everything else is extremely, extremely important. I mean, I know I want to go back to work. I want to be fully operational, and I want the neighbors to do well, because if we do well as a family, as a community, and as a city, as a country, we will do so much more and so much better. But I also understand that as an employer, for instance, you cannot sacrifice the lives of your employees and send them to work, because guess what? When they get sick, then your unemployment insurance will go up. I mean, your healthcare, your health insurance will go up as well. So you have to think about those costs as well, and you cannot disregard them. I mean, if you're not doing well financially, you always have to think, okay, what will be the cost of me going back to work right now? I know we're desperate. I know we're anxious, but let's think strategically, right? Let's think more as business people rather than people who want to pay the bills. And I know we want to pay the bills. I want to pay my bills and all the debts and the mortgages, etc. But let's think about that. So I'm fortunate to be, and I'm very honored to be part of the Commission on the Asian American Pacific Islander Affairs. And so, and we got great support from Mayor Bowser and from our Moape office, from Ben de Guzman, James Henry, and my fellow Commissioner Karen Kwok, in actually launching a mental health seminar. So we started right in the middle of the pandemic, when they just started with the social distancing, with a shutdown, stay at home, where all of a sudden we ended up being with all the family members, right, in one space, and having all these meetings and classes and etc. So we decided to have a mental health workshop where we invited speakers from the DC Behavioral Health Agency. We also invited speakers who spoke about the personal relations and addictions. And that was more about kind of like providing resources, providing skills, and providing more information to the audience as to how to deal, how to cope, and to make sure that they understand depression during this time is normal. Being anxious is normal. Being very demanding and being very kind of like self-focused is also normal, because this is part of us. So when we accept it as normal, I think that helps us kind of like charter our course much better, more strategic, and more balanced. And I think that brings more peace to us. And again, when the anxiety about the job, try to go outside of your comfort zone. Do something that you've never done before. Try to provide more, even at no cost. I mean, we're providing more information and whatever at absolutely no charge to customers, because we know that when we go out, when we are ready to go out and to kind of like be part of the normal life, or of the new norm, maybe we will have a much bigger audience. Might have a much bigger clientele base.
Well, Elena, as I'm listening to you speak, I imagine, 20 years ago, it wasn't as common for people to talk about their mental health or their struggles. I mean, I'm sure people dealt with their work stress privately. Yeah. Over time, it seems more acceptable, this is a question, to be more vocal about the stress that you're dealing with. But in the realities of the workplace, especially when we're talking about Fortune 100, Fortune 500 companies, big companies, or when you're working for the government, are they more tolerant of someone saying that they're having depression? Or are you seeing that it's still advisable for people to find help and keep their stress separate from the workplace?
Right. So I cannot speak on behalf of my members. I mean, because every corporations have their own, but I do know that there is a tendency now. So companies and we as a society are much more open, right, to the mental well-being, to the mental health, to the idea, to the concept of the depression, to people who have all the anxiety and etc. And I think that speaking kind of like more at a eye-to-eye, kind of like me speaking with you, with the audience, so that to make it more relevant, let me just give you an example. I always thought that looking good physically, right, athletically, is part of being me. That gives me more confidence. And so I spend money on buying cosmetics. I spend money on buying clothing so that I look good. I spend money on going to the gym and doing my exercise and following my diets, buying organic and whatever. But then it occurred to me, I was like, I'm thinking and I'm trying to improve the building, the facade. But how about the mental health? I mean, how about all these inner struggles, inner issues that I have within me that also need to be taken care of? So I started going, like many of us, right? Here we have internet. And so when you Google and when you try kind of like to think like, oh, here is I don't know, this is what I have, or this looks like what I'm more anxious, or no, I'm more passive aggressive, or I'm an introvert, I'm an extrovert. And then I think that without proper guidance, without proper things, we kind of like start using labels. And I see it all the time. I hear it all the time. Sometimes people, because they like to have a clean and neat environment, they claim that they are OCDs. They don't know what OCD is, right? From the clinical point of view. I mean, they use the labels without understanding what these issues really are. So I think that what's important is don't necessarily rely. I mean, if you have a healthcare issue, you wouldn't go to online to get your diagnosis. You will go to the profession, to the healthcare professional. You will get a telemedicine. It's the same with the mental health. And I can tell that I decided after I looked into my into my external thinking, like I look good, I feel good, but I want to feel even better. So I actually enrolled the help of the healthcare professional as well. To work on to give me the tools, to give me the skills on how to be better, how to be more kind of like much gentler to myself. Because again, we live in the society that demands a lot from us. We also demand a lot from ourselves. So how do we keep up with this pressure, but at the same time be mindful that sometimes we need to give ourselves a break? We don't need to be perfect 100%. We can be perfect 80% of the time. 20% of the time we can dedicate to ourselves. So I'm glad that you have this K-12, I mean, and the kind of like the mental health dialogue. But I think that mental health starts with a baby, right? How we treat our children at a very young age is also part of mental health. I mean, if they see that their parents are loving, that they embrace and they hug and whatever, that makes children more adaptable and more acceptable to the idea that I can be hugged, I can be loved. When they see people, I mean, when growing up, I'm so fortunate to have my parents. They're going to celebrate 40 some years of being with each other. But I also understand that family relations are not perfect. I mean, you have the good days, you have the bad days, but knowing that people still have good, strong, loving relations make all the challenges go away and make children and family members be more adaptable, be more acceptable, and be more, I don't know, be more ready to the challenges. So I cannot say how important, I cannot say enough and cannot emphasize enough the importance of the mental health. And again, being part of the commission does allow me to talk. I'm not a healthcare professional. I'm not an expert. I'm an enthusiast who does understand that without good kind of like inner structure, we cannot operate and we cannot make logical decisions. Sometimes our decisions will be spontaneous. Sometimes it will be irrational because it's an impetus, right? If we see something that needs to be fixed, we will want to do instead of just stepping back and thinking like, okay, am I healthy enough to make this decision?
Sorry to cut you off. I mean, I love that this conversation is taking place. I know here in Denver, we also have commissions who are supporting this conversation around mental health. And I agree with you that it's better to talk to a professional to get the right supports and the combination of the physical, the mental, the spiritual balance and supports are really, really important for us as individuals to get through. I mean, I think at the beginning of all of this, it was really exciting. Oh, I can stay home. I don't have to drive. I can do all of this through technology. Well, honestly, I think by now the shiny has worn off on being at home, and people are not getting enough exercise, or they're not getting enough vitamin D, or they're snacking and they're putting foods in their body that increase inflammation and all of these things that can impact how we're feeling and our mental capacity. You know, that's those are things that are I feel like we have a power to change. But for those people that have more serious conditions who may not have the ability to go and see their doctor or get that advice, you know, I would encourage them to reach out to their local mental health supports or commissions, or talk to their doctor to make sure that they're doing all the things that they can at home to maintain, because a lot of people are still working from home. I'm working full-time from home. So I have to, you know, keep my energy up and stay excited and have vitality. These are really real emotions and things that people are going through.
Sure. And, I'm not an expert. So I'm like you, I'm just, I'm one of us, right? I'm one of you. So my understanding is that the city, like for instance, in DC, there is a hotline. So you can actually go to the hotline, and then you can, and there are resources that are provided to the DC residents. So I'm sure that in every city, every local authority provides the same. They provide them with the tools and with the resources to identify help. And talking about, I mean, being kind of like within this stay-at-home time frame and kind of like surrounding the environment doesn't mean that you have to give up your exercise. I mean, I see people running outside, and so them not wearing masks, I mean, gives me a little bit of anxiety because they are not afraid of getting the coronavirus, but I am. So I try to keep my social distance. But what I've decided to do is that, I mean, we have internet, right? YouTube. And on YouTube, I found so many great exercises. And I do like them because it helps me maintain my good shape. It gives me, like, there are exercises where you can, in 15 minutes or in 45 minutes, today I did one, in 45 minutes, you can actually burn 500 calories and improve your metabolism. I was like, okay, I can eat a chocolate and then I can do my 45 minutes of exercise, and then I can burn this energy.
One chocolate. Elena.
One chocolate, that's right, one chocolate. So everything in moderation. They talk about the discipline. I mean, they talk about the discipline. We are creatures of habits, right? We like to have our own routine. We like to do with the familiar. We don't like when someone throws me, when I tell you, like right now, let's do something crazy, something that you're afraid of, you will be like, no. I have my comfort, I have my home, I would rather do my music or whatever. But I think that this is the time where we can safely explore something that we've never done before. And that safely something can be either professional. I mean, you can actually try and experiment within your work with your audience. Try to provide them with something more than you would typically provide them at a certain monetary exchange, let's say, right? At a certain price. Try to provide more free services to your audience, because what you're doing right now is you're catering to your audience. You're prepping them to become your potential clients. And social media helps a lot. With exercises, the same with the exercises. Stay away from buying online, because I fell into that habit at the very beginning. That was my favorite pastime. And when people say for mental health, they always say, like, find a hobby, find a hobby. And to me, hobby is something that you have to cultivate for a long time, that you have to dedicate your time. So for me, hobby, it's a scary thing, because I don't want to have a hobby that I will be stuck with for the rest of my life. So pastime to me is a better word. So find your favorite pastime that gives you satisfaction. And I'll tell you, so there is a Korean show called mukbang. So it's when people eat in front of the camera. I can do that. I mean, I can just, if I'm craving something, I can watch these people on YouTube that satisfy my cravings, that kind of like gives me the positive energy, and then I can switch and do something else. I mean, like you said, it's very busy. This time of staying at home has been actually even busier than my normal office time. So, but nevertheless, I really do enjoy that. And I think the reason being is that I personally decided that let's take advantage of this time. Let's make the best out of this time, rather than just see and commiserate and complain about it.
Yes,
so attitude.
Yes, we can definitely leverage this time that we have to explore things that bring us joy, make us smile. We have so much power to change if we're unhappy about something. Sometimes it's as simple as disconnecting from social media, because there's just so much right now on social media, and everybody is becoming increasingly opinionated about what needs to happen. So if you're not prepared to see all of these emotions, maybe it's time to disconnect, go outside, get some vitamin D, go for a run, get your adrenals, everything happy, and hormones going, endorphins.
Yeah.
And call your friends and have some fun social conversations.
Social conversations, yes. I mean, have utilized social media, but I think that where the challenge is that we do not like to receive criticism. We do not like to receive negative feedback. And so, and I know when we get something of a critical nature, right, we get flooded. I mean, we get flooded emotionally. We can sense it within ourselves, all the changes and everything. I mean, again, I'm just judging from my personal experience. But being criticized is good, because again, people are trying to point out your weaknesses. something that you can then turn into the strengths. Because now that I know, for instance, that I have certain weaknesses or certain kind of like features that need to be improved, I'm trying to work on them, because so that when I'm ready or when the time comes, people can see that, okay, this negative kind of like feature within me is now more positive. Guess why? Because I took it into consideration, because I decided to change it within me so that I'm a better companion, so that I'm a better colleague, a better listener, and a better human being. Again, I think what I've heard sometimes and from other people is that don't try to change other people. Don't try to change for other people. But there is a difference. There is a good change, and then there is a bad change. So if it is a good change that will benefit you, and most all changes will benefit you. I mean, if they come from a good place, if they come from a friend, if they come from a person who really cares about you, these are good changes. Don't think of them. Don't try to say. Don't try to resist them. Embrace them, because at the end of the day, they will make you better, and you will be so proud of yourself. That also gives you a sense of accomplishment. You know what? I was such and such, but now with this feedback, I turned into something different, into a much better person. You feel better, people around you feel better. So,
well, self-improvement, it never goes out of style, right?
I think we always need to work. And some people say like, oh, well, I'm tired. I mean, why do I have to change? I'm so comfortable. Well, guess what? I mean, if we're comfortable, we're going to stay at our own level. And there is nothing wrong with being at the level that you're in and sticking to that level for the rest of your life. If that's what brings you the best, if that gives you the confidence or whatever, kudos to you. But I think that most people are trying to achieve more, are trying to do better, are trying to feel the sense of accomplishment, because there is nothing more satisfying than being proud of yourself. And when we do something.
Yes, I think there are certain character traits that we can all continue to work on. One would be patience.
Right.
We can all
Yes.
work on patience. We can all work on being more tolerant. We can
Yes.
all work on being more loving.
Yes.
We can all work on being better active listeners.
Mm-hmm.
So it really is not about having to change your character as far as your personality and the things you are, but these character traits are things that I think as human beings, because we're intrinsically selfish, we intrinsically have we're in our own heads a lot. And we forget sometimes how to think about other people, which is empathy and understanding and communicating. We can work on these things. I know I personally have the things that I'm working on to process and say, well, this person said something, this is how I heard it, but really the heart of what they said was not the intention of how I received it. This is how you can impact the amount of stress that you have in your life, is by working on these things. It's a perfect time to massage and strengthen and exercise these character skills.
Yes, absolutely. I think that knowing, we discussed this again a little bit earlier, that when I came to the US, I mean, and I do understand that I also read a lot about the US, and I may have been traveling a lot. The US, American society is a very individualistic society. So we're very self-focused, very self-centered. It's all about me. It's all about it's all about mine and my. So, but we are also are part of the society. And so we have to take into consideration the views of others, the feelings and the sensations and the impressions. So, and that's, I think, where sometimes the complexity is. How do I put I, my, mine, and whatever in the context of we, our, they, and so on? That sometimes and it also depends on when your aha moment comes in, right? So when you're younger, when you're in high school, and you kind of like understand, okay, I am who I am, but also I need to be part of this society, then I think it's easy for people to adapt. When we're older, I mean, sometimes I know it's very difficult for me to change my habits, to change my rituals, to change my convictions, to change my interests. But like you said, self-improvement, it comes. You have to accept it and think of it as an opportunity. Don't think of it as a challenge. I think that's very important.
I love that you brought up the individualistic versus collective societies. Yes. I did a book study called Culturally Responsive Teaching in the Brain by Zaretta Hammond. And she has a chart of the countries, top 100 countries, and where they rank in this society of individualistic. And actually Korea was #1 in more collectivism, and the Asian countries and some African countries are more about society and collective functioning. And United States was obviously really high as an individualistic society, which is really interesting because many people come from all over the world who are coming from collectivist societies, and then they're like thrust into this more individualistic, competitive society. And I think this is an opportunity for us, not only as educators, but business owners, to understand, yes, we live in a very competitive, individualistic, general Western thinking, but really there are so many benefits to functioning in a collective type of ideology, and that's where those relationships are important and tie in, and that is the strength and the benefit that people bring when they come from different collectivist societies.
I think you just emphasized two things. And so in terms of COVID and coronavirus, right? So we know that some of the countries that really excelled in their fight against the pandemic are, and one of those countries is South Korea. And so again, I'm not an expert on South Korea, I don't speak the Korean language, but reading the articles, what they emphasize is the sense of discipline. So when the authorities said it's a stay at home, or not stay at home, but when everybody needs to wear a mask or do certain things, then people do follow because they understand that they are part of the society. So there is this a good kind of like sense of respect for authority and obedience in a good sense of that, right? Not just following blindly, but realizing that you're part of the society, so your responsibility is follow the guidelines. I think that in the US, I was thinking like, okay, how can you force people to stay home? You can't. Because we are so individualistic. I mean, it's all about my personal freedom. I want to be able to move from DC to New York, or I want to be able to move to my friend's house. No one can prevent, no one can actually preclude me from my personal freedoms, from my personal movement. And I think that's where it's a good thing. It's also maybe something that we need to work on, especially during these challenging times. I think we have to think about the well-being of us as a society, because if I'm healthy, but the rest of my building, the rest of my society is not healthy, guess what? I'm not going to have healthy clients who will be working and generating profits for me. So again, put health first, and then let's think collectively about and again, I'm not saying that you shouldn't be anxious about paying the bills, very important, but let's put health at the kind of like at the cornerstone of our issues. And talking about competition, the best thing I think about the US is competition. People are very creative. It's a cutting edge technology, innovation. And I think that when I'm thinking kind of like back then, so I had a friend and she was an expert on analytical stuff. And so she compared different economies and whatever. And so that was several years back then. And I said, well, what's the best country in the world to do business? And I was thinking like maybe Japan, Germany, right? So, and she said, the US. And I was like, how come? And she said, well, look, freedom of innovation, freedom of thought. I mean, we can do whatever we want. And I think that just to emphasize that even during these challenging times, let's innovate, let's think creatively, let's kind of like get outside of our comfort zone so that we can find solutions, so that we can find new ways of doing business. It's a new norm. And let's not go back to the old normal. I mean, it's an old comfort zone, but we have to think creatively. I mean, business trips are probably going to be part of the past, because now that we discovered this online conference calls and everything else, we're not going to spend thousands of dollars on travel. We're just going to click on at no expense or at the minimum charge. We're going to connect with our customers and be able to have a conversation with them. So let's be creative. Let's embrace the best that the American society can do, and especially the business, because I will tell you this, and going back again about the business. So the world offers multitude of opportunities, right, to American companies, and everybody wants American companies. One of the biggest challenges that I personally have when speaking with, let's say, small and medium-sized enterprises is taking them outside of the US market and bring them to international markets. Because their first thing is that, Elena, why should I go thousands of miles, 17 hours of travel to a foreign market where I don't know the language, where I don't know people, where I don't have any PR or absolutely nothing, where there is a different currency? I'm so comfortable here. The US is the most profitable market. I know the people, I know the currency, I have my supply chain, I have my logistics. So for us, it's very difficult because the US is one of the best markets for these companies. So again, let's just think about how we can improve, how we can innovate, how we can create so that we don't take this as a challenge, but take this as an opportunity for us, for our professional growth, for our business growth, and for our personal growth.
Wow, I hadn't thought about, we've been talking about the new normal, but I hadn't thought about the new normal of potentially fewer flights and travel as an impact of all of this learning that we're having with technology. That's a really interesting view.
Yeah. And I think that I have to kind of like correct myself because we also represent companies that that are in the travel industry, that are in the aviation industry. And so one of the things is that I think that non-essential travel, right? Let's put it like this. Non-essential travel will be then conducted through online. Of course, when you work with customers and when you have to go visit your facility or whatever, meet with the customers, important customers, then you will jump on the plane and go and travel. But anything like, okay, let me just pick up the phone. So maybe instead of pick up the phone, you will speak online because this is you have face to face, you can see the reaction. When I tell you like, okay, Priscilla, this new type of business is going to cost you, I don't know, so much money. And if I see your reaction like, oh, then I know that my number is too high. Maybe I will then say, oh, let's just then maybe discuss something that will be more acceptable to you. Maybe let's discuss the payment plan. Maybe let's see. So having these online communications, yes, we do not have this personal kind of like connection, but at least we can see the reaction. So yes, let's think about the new norm and let's adapt to the new norm. And let's not think about the old times. Good times the old times are always good times. up to the certain level, up to the certain time, for the right audience and for the right time.
Well, we're always propelled to change through a crisis. And this is clearly a big crisis that's impacting everybody all over the globe. So we're all in this together. I guess that's the good part of
exactly. United we stand. Yes, united we stand. And I think I cannot emphasize what I really like is that while the US is a very individualistic society, the sense of patriotism, the sense of this, sense of belonging to the society, the pride for the flag, the country, for our history and the roots is incredibly high. And I mean, today we had the Thunderbirds and the Blue Angels flying over DC in recognition of the great work that the healthcare and the frontliners and everybody else, people at the drugstores, people at the grocery stores are doing to actually help the society keep healthy and keep going. So it's incredible. I mean, being grateful, I think, is the gratitude is part of life as well. And so let it be the new normal, being grateful for the fact that we are alive, that we are able to have this conversation, that we are able to be looking online, because if we have internet, that means that we have a little bit of money to pay our bills. So let's be grateful for what we have, right? And as a person of religion, I mean, as a person of who trusts and believes in God, I do believe that He will take care of us. He does throw these challenges and He does throw these kind of like roadblocks on our way, but this is just to shake us up.
Faith is really important to
Yes.
get through some of the most trying times, and especially when there are things that are out of our control. I concur with you that is a big part of my life as well. So yeah. Elena, here's what I do know about you. Let's go to a little bit of fun.
Sure.
To wind down. I know that you are quite the fashionista.
Oh, thank you. You too.
Not quite like you, because I have seen your wardrobe and it's fabulous, and you are very meticulous and beautiful, clean. The lines in your house are very clean and Asian, but you also have that European influence. Outside of the joy that fashion and makeup bring to you, you can talk about that. What are some other things that are making you smile these days and bringing you joy?
My friends, my family, my parents. So talking about the fashion sense, right? My dad is incredibly meticulous. And as an Asian dad, he actually puts a lot of pressure on me to look good. So I sometimes put on something and he will be in something that I do like and think like, oh, I look gorgeous. I look so good. So I can go and conquer the world. But then when he looks at me, he'll be like, no, you can't go out like that. And all of me like goes, whoop. Dad, why? And he said, no, because this doesn't match this. And so again, he's looking at me from from as an outsider, right? So maybe there are some things that I do not see. So again, that's a feedback. So that brings me joy. So now my thing is that, so before I would used to kind of like, I put something and then I would run away so that my dad never criticized me. But now, no, I actually take time, even for meetings like this, right? So I take time, I put on something, and then I ask my dad, like, how do you think it looks? And he was like, that sense of stamp of approval. So I'm like, okay, I can go live. So speaking with my mom, learning recipes from my mom, because my mom is an incredible cook. I am a lousy cook. No, actually, I would say I'm a good cook. I can make certain things good, but I'm much better at cleaning. So that brings me also, that's something that I like. It's when my house is clean, here's everything in order. When my house is a mess, then everything here is a mess too. So I kind of like, there is a sense of relevance. So I try to keep my house in a good shape so that everything here is in good shape as well.
So Elena, Marie Kondo and Elena Son.
Oh, no.
Who's higher?
So for her, I mean, I really give her a credit for creating an empire that is built on a good, strong kind of like organizational skills. I have my own skills. I mean, I don't think that we're in the same category because my approach is different. My approach is that I have to make sure that there is, I think your approach is that there is structure and it's a visual, right? My approach is, I think that I have to make sure that it's acceptable to me. It's my sense of kind of like organization, that it looks good, and something that I like. So, but here is what I think, and that's mental health. I think that sometimes my house can be a total mess, and that's totally fine, and I accept it. But then it gives me pleasure to put the house back in order and to bring it to the clean, to the standards that I actually enjoy and like. I think with her, the house is always clean. With me, I do give myself sometimes a break. And so keeping my house clean, I mean, keeping my crystals not shiny and whatever, that gives me pleasure as well. It's small things. I mean, I can't say that something that gives me absolute pleasure. I mean, again, watching sometimes the Korean makeup and the Korean clothing, that's 5 minutes, 10 minutes, that gives me a lot of pleasure, and that helps me fall asleep as well faster. Yeah. How about you?
Oh, for me, what brings me joy, this, like, I finally feel like life has slowed down enough that I can take time to connect. We've had a couple of, everything's been on text message for the last, year and a half. And so it's not the same as when I get to see you and talk to you. And so having these deeper conversations and getting to know you better, I love learning more things about you that I didn't know before. And so that, and going outside and sitting on our deck and getting some sun, I just love that. So I'm easy to please. I mean, I don't require a lot to be happy. I have a lot of joy typically. So, but being forced to slow down for sure.
I think I have to agree with you about texting, because I cannot stand texting now. I mean, texting has been part of our life, right? So my fingers are hurting. I don't want to speak with people via text. I want a live communication, because then it helps me be a better friend, be a better partner. And with text, you cannot pass certain emotions. Sometimes you have to be within a certain text size, so that you do not look anxious, whatever, right? So when you send like a lengthy sheet, then people think like, oh, you have some. No, because we have different approaches. And also another thing that I've just recently learned is that when you're bilingual, you structure your thoughts in a different way. And then you have more verbs, and I don't know, you have more words and more syllables maybe, because you're kind of like thinking in two languages, or in three languages, or multi-language kind of like environment. But I have to say that I when we first met, I did admire you, because again, you being a teacher is I don't know, my mom is a teacher, so I know the work, I know the effort and the energy and the passion and the heart that people like you put into this profession. And I know sometimes that people do not always appreciate the work that the teachers do for our children, for us as parents, or for us as family members, as for us as a society. So I think that this time will help everyone realize and appreciate the work and the energy that you put into every child, not just into someone, but into every child. And also, you're very versatile. I admire that you have this passion of teaching music, of doing your crafts with the soul, because you showed us all your samples there. And I now admire that you're running. You're running for the Board of Education. Kudos to you. And doing the campaign during these challenging times. Oh, I don't know if I would be able ever to do that during the shutdown, during the stay at home. I ran my campaign when I was able to go with the flyers and everything else. So, and I had the interaction and I lost, but you're doing it now in a totally different environment, under different rules. And so my respect to you and kudos to you. And I really applaud you for that.
Thank you, Elena, my sister.
Yes, of course.
And I admire you so much too for using your voice and being so articulate, intelligent, and passionate with what you've decided to do with your life and your career, and bringing countries and different people together and working with all of these businesses so people can follow their passions. I mean, it's like a big circle of the work that you do. So thank you for giving us your time and being so generous. I love you so much. I can't wait until we can sit down and have a meal together. I hope maybe I can fly to DC and maybe fly with you to Uzbekistan, because I've never been to Uzbekistan, and you can show me around.
Yes, right. Yes. Always welcome, and thank you so much again for the opportunity to speak with you, to see you online. I mean, when was the last time? That was in 2018, right? That we communicated kind of like in person. Everything else was via text. But thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to interact with you, to interact with your listeners, with your audience, and try to be, I don't know, trying to share maybe some information and some feedback and some insights that hope will be helpful for all of us. Thank you.
So, everybody, this was Elena Son. Please look up her. I'll put her contact information, website in the chat. And be well. Give your parents a hug for me, please. Stay healthy and keep that smile. Okay.
Thank you. The same to you, and my best to your family and to your mom and to everybody else. Love you.
Love you.
Okay. Bye-bye.